here, and they are impersonators, or what would you call them, reenactors.
Reenactors,
They are reenactors, more than actors, because they will be available to talk to people in the French Quarter today and portray their role.
And you know, they had hoped this would be a much, and not that it's not going to be a big ceremony, but they had hoped that the president of this country, France, and I believe Spain would be here to try and bring all this together and show the importance of this historic occasion and what was such a monumental move in this country 200 years ago, but that didn't come to fruition. And later in the program, we're going to be joined by our historian here, Dr. Doug Brinkley, the professor of history and director of the UNO Eisenhower Center. He'll be bringing us kind of a background information. He is an expert on Louisiana Purchase.
But right now, I understand that the ceremonies are underway and dignitaries are at the podium preparing to speak at this time.
Historians and all of you who have gathered here today, I say good morning to you. Good morning on a wonderful, wonderful New Orleans day. We've ordered up great sunshine for you, pleasant weather, and a wonderful reenactment of what makes this place very special. It's my pleasure, it's my double pleasure to welcome you to the 200th anniversary of the Louisiana Purchase, a purchase that went down in history as one of the greatest transactions this world has ever seen. And it's also led to one of the greatest cities in the world, the city of New Orleans. 200 years ago, yes, thank you. Somebody out there likes New Orleans. The rest of you have hangovers from the hurricanes, I'm sure. But 200 years ago, a Haitian slave revolt led by Toussaint Louverture sparked the greatest land deal in our nation's history. The French Emperor Napoleon sold the Louisiana colony for $15 million to the United States. $15 million. The equivalent amount today is $250 million, which is basically 2 arenas next to the Superdome. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good deal. In doing so, the face of our nation was changed forever. We, as descendants of the Purchase, are charged to continue that change to improve our city, our region, our state, and our country. We must keep that in mind as we celebrate the Louisiana Bicentennial. With that said, I would like to introduce the lead U.S. delegation to this ceremony. President Bush appointed Gail Norton Secretary of the Interior on January of 2001. She is the first woman to head the 153-year-old department, and she prides herself on being a conservative who brings a common sense approach to environmental policy. Secretary Gail Norton. Secretary. Let's welcome the Secretary, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone. What a wonderful day. Well, I'm pleased to be here as a representative of the federal government, but let me begin by expressing thanks on behalf of my department. The National Park Service has been very involved in planning this event, and we thank all of you for the partnerships that make this kind of an event possible. I appreciate being here with the representatives not just of our American agencies, but also it's wonderful that we have here today representatives from France and from Spain. It is so rare in the history of the world to have peaceful transfers of land take place. And that's what we've seen, and that's what we celebrate here today. It's my honor to share with you a letter from the President of the United States. This is dated yesterday and comes from the White House. I send greetings to those celebrating the bicentennial of the Louisiana Purchase. The purchase of the Louisiana Territory was a proud event in the history of our nation. By adding 828,000 square miles of land, this transaction nearly doubled the size of America and extended unprecedented opportunities to our citizens. In the years after 1803, the exploration and settlement of the states that grew from this frontier were vital in shaping our country and our national character. I applaud the organizers and participants for observing this important anniversary. By celebrating our history, we honor the vision of our founders and reaffirm our commitment to advancing the ideals that make our nation strong. Laura joins me in sending our best wishes, George Bush. At the Interior Department, we manage 1 out of every 5 acres of land in the United States. Many of our most cherished parks, refuges, and monuments reside in the states of Louisiana Purchase. At Interior, we're involved in historic preservation and in educating people about the history of our country. As we celebrate the bicentennial of the Louisiana Purchase, we are also celebrating the Lewis and Clark Expedition Bicentennial. These explorers of the area purchased in the Louisiana Purchase represent Jefferson's vision. These were 2 parts of the expansion of our country that he foresaw. On December 12th of 1803, Lewis and Clark's Corps of Discovery had arrived at the mouth of the Missouri River near St. Louis, where they settled in for the winter. Lewis visited Lieutenant Governor Charles de Lassus, who administered the Upper Louisiana for Spain. The Lieutenant Governor was cordial, but told Lewis that his orders forbade granting permission for the Corps of Discovery to ascend the Missouri River. The news of the Louisiana Purchase changed all of that. When the Upper Louisiana was transferred in March of 1804, Meriwether Lewis signed that document as a witness. Reaction to the Louisiana Purchase was different across the country. Some feared the nation would become a colonial power that would require an undesirably strong central government. Others viewed it as a natural progression in America's destiny. Whatever the early views, it has had an enduring impact. The National Archives recently named the 5 most significant documents in American history. The rating of the documents was determined by a people's vote, asking 40,000 Americans to rank documents from among 100 choices. The Declaration of Independence topped the list. The Constitution was second and the Bill of Rights third. But the Louisiana Purchase earned the rank of the 4th most important document in American history. The Louisiana Purchase launched the United States toward a coast-to-coast future. What seems so central to our national makeup might never have happened without this peaceful transfer. Today's reenactment is a fitting tribute to a document that helped shape our world. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this magnificent day. Thank you.
Good morning. To the ambassadors, to the secretary, to the governor, governor-elect, to the mayor, to all the dignitaries here assembled, and to the leading citizens of New Orleans and Louisiana and this great region. Welcome to this wonderful reenactment of an extraordinary event that occurred here in this very spot 200 years ago. Ours was a very young nation, 200 years ago, it had its greatest and most significant day in its history. On that day, this nation, the United States, took possession of the Louisiana Territory, including the Mississippi River and its watershed, the greatest river system in the North American continent, doubling its size by the signing of that document. The crown jewel of the Louisiana Purchase was our own, our beloved city of New Orleans, the most strategic and important piece of real estate on the North American continent at that time. New Orleans was and remains today, in many ways, the key, the gateway, the springboard to the greatest nation on earth achieving its destiny from east to west coast and continuing to influence in a good and moral way the world as it unfolds. New Orleans, like the rest of what was become to our great state, was already enriched by the extraordinary, strong cultures of Spain and France, which blossomed here. 200 years later, it still stands as one of the greatest days in our nation's history, which we're celebrating today. Our nation has prospered because of its bounty and potential made possible by that event. We are today here gathered, and I have to reflect with all of you here that the leaders of that day could not have possibly even imagined the tremendous advantages, the tremendous progress that would have been made in 200 years, not just in the establishment of the states within the territory, but the richness and the victories and the accomplishments that have occurred. And if our leaders gathered on this square 200 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, would have thought that seeing this ceremony would be the representative of the United States government, a woman representing the United States government, a woman sworn in to be sworn in as the governor of Louisiana, and a woman being representing the Senate of the United States, and ambassadors of all different shades and backgrounds, it is truly a testimony to what 200 years of hard work and goodwill and love for a state and the region and a nation can bring. So I am so pleased to welcome to you two of outstanding leaders that are with us, world leaders. First, the French ambassador to the United States, Jean-David Lévy, and the Spanish ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Francisco Javier Riberas Ribero, to be with us this morning. Ambassadors, you honor us with our presence. You remind us of the great friendships that we have with these two great nations. We thank you for being here today. We thank you for what the friendship of our nations has brought us in the last 200 years. And we look forward, ambassadors, to the next 200 years as friends and allies to French and to Spain. Thank you.
My name is Javier Ruperez. I'm the Spanish ambassador to the United States. And I would like to tell you, first of all, thank you. I would like to tell you, first of all, how thrilled and happy and humbled I am by your invitation to be here today at the celebration of this bicentennial of the Louisiana Purchase. And indeed, as Senator Landria just said, we are looking forward for the next 200 years of friendship and cooperation between our two countries. Today is a day in which history takes leave of being printed in books in order to remind us that we are what we are because of what we were what we gave and what was given to us. The Spanish flag was lowered in Louisiana 200 years ago, and within a few moments it will once again be lowered here. Although Spanish eyes were the first European ones to lay sight on these lands, Louisiana only belonged to the Spanish crown for scarcely 40 years. However, whoever reads the chronicles from that era, or what historians wrote afterwards, knows that that relatively brief period of time was one of relatively a notable demographic growth. It was then where the Isleños, and especially the Acadians, arrived, and of constant economic progress, which deeply transformed the territory's nature and its organization. Moreover, the Spanish administration was respectful of what it found here. During that period, the first newspaper was founded in Louisiana, naturellement en français. And lastly, I would like to point out that at that time and during Galvez's government, Spanish Louisiana provided an important and oftentimes insufficiently known and valued contribution to the cause of American independence. Overall, those were 14 intense years of Louisiana being fully integrated into the Hispanic world. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, flags are raised and lowered. An administration changes, but they leave behind them a shared history and heritage. We are saluting to the Spanish flag not only what united us, but also the symbol of permanent friendship which exists between Spain and Louisiana, between Spain and the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Dear friends, I'm Jean-David Lévy, the French ambassador. I'm delighted. I'm truly delighted and honored to be with you today on this great occasion. In a few moments, Jean-Louis Debré, the President of the French National Assembly, will deliver a speech. As Ambassador of France to the US, I will therefore confine myself to very short remarks. In October, I was at Yorktown for the commemoration of the decisive battle of your war for independence. During this battle, led by Lafayette, Rochambeau, de Grasse, thousands and thousands of French soldiers fought side by side with your soldiers. 22 years later, two exceptional leaders, Thomas Jefferson and Napoleon Bonaparte, took a decision which remains rather unique in history: the peaceful transfer of a huge territory, 1/3 of the US mainland. Your young republic doubled in size. For Napoleon Bonaparte, it was a logical and natural choice. France wanted to help your nascent republic to emerge as a powerful friend and ally on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. In return, America saved France twice last century. We will never forget. Dear friends, we will never forget, and next year, on the 6th of June, we will commemorate in the most solemn and moving way the 60th anniversary of D-Day. Our friendship is not only deeply rooted in history, it is based on shared values, democracy, freedom, and it is in Louisiana, in New Orleans, that this friendship, deeply rooted in history and on shared values, has been best maintained. And for that, I want to say thank you. And you have to know that Louisiana and New Orleans are indeed very special to the heart of all French people. Our friendship is a treasure. It must be protected, preserved, and maintained. God bless New Orleans, God bless Louisiana, and God bless America.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If I could take the liberty to introduce another ambassador that's with us, a very special ambassador, the ambassador from Haiti to the United Nations has joined us. And we have learned in the last few years the significance of the Haitian revolt that led to the series of events that ended up having the Louisiana Purchase completed. And I'm going to ask the ambassador to come forward, and then we will move up to the next part of our program. But before I do, I also would like to take the liberty of introducing to our ambassadors and distinguished guests a direct descendant of the first governor of the Louisiana Territory who's with us, the Honorable Ambassador Lindy Boggs. She may be inside. She may be inside the room above us, but I wanted the ambassadors to know that we have in our midst a direct descendant, and she is with us today. So would the ambassador come forward from Haiti and give us a few words of insight? Thank you.
Madam Secretary, dear elected officials, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Haiti, His Excellency Jean-Bertrand Aristide, on behalf of the government and the people of Haiti, who I'm honored to represent here, I'm delighted to share with you this important moment of joy and happiness brought upon us by the Louisiana Purchase Bicentennial celebration. I salute the savoir-faire and the know-how of the organizer of this event and thank them for a job well done and invited us to share this moment with you. I extend my warm and patriotic greeting to the Haitian and Haitian American living in the great state of Louisiana. Chers compatriotes, la mère patrie est fière de vous et vous aime. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republic of Haiti is proud to be associated to that solemn event that is taking place only 10 days before its bicentennial independence commemoration on January 1st, 2004. It takes this opportunity to remind how the determination and action of concerned citizens at a given moment can change forever their destiny and make an impact on world history. The Louisiana Purchase and the independence of Haiti from the French are among vivid examples of what human beings can accomplish to promote the greatest of their nations. The Haitian Revolution has repercussions beyond the border of the small island in many parts of the world. Louisiana and Haiti, 200 years ago, met at the crossroad of destiny, and at a historical moment where Napoleon Bonaparte, tired and disappointed after losing the pearl of their colonies, Haiti, to the first successful slave rebellion in the history of mankind, lost his interest to establish an empire in the Americas and had no other choice but to finalize on December 20, 1803, the purchase deal approved in April 1803, and to end this wonderful piece of land this pearl Louisiana to a very young republic and double the size of the United States of America. Louisiana and Haiti, two lands that have the French language and the rich blend of the African culture in common, share a convergent destiny where they separate themselves from imperial France. Some people argue that the Louisiana Purchase is the most significant real estate transaction in the history of the nation. General Horatio Gates, in an address to President Thomas Jefferson on July 18, 1803, stated, "Let the giant rejoice, for you have bought Louisiana for a song." As a matter of fact, the $15 million paid by the United States to Napoleon is the cheapest bargain that the American taxpayer could have never made. Indeed, this date, December 20, 1803, marked the beginning of the march toward the status of great world power by the United States of America. We Haitians are proud that not only we have shed our blood for the independence of the United States at Savannah, but our forefathers have been contributors to the greatness of the United States by defeating the powerful French army that Napoleon Bonaparte sent to Saint-Domingue to establish slavery. The United Nations as a world body is paying tribute somewhat to this event by proclaiming the year 2004 International Year of Struggle Against Slavery and its Abolition, as it is the year commemorating the 200th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in the first black state in the Western Hemisphere. Citizens of Louisiana, citizens of the United States, you shall not forget the creator of the Haitian nation for your indebtedness to them, as you must be proud of your forefathers who allow you to own this jewel piece of land, cradle of liberty, democracy, and prosperity. Citizens of Louisiana, citizens of the United States, enjoy, cherish, and protect your land of your heritage. May God bless you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank all of our dignitaries. You're all welcome to stay here until they escort you elsewhere if you want to watch this.
And that's the conclusion of this, actually the speech part of the ceremony this morning.
Oh, there's much more to come. But right now we're very happy to have Doug Brinkley with us, an historian who has written on this subject. And a lot of people are wondering why President Bush, and we understand President Chirac also turned down
and
this
King Juan
opportunity.
Carlos, yeah.
Yes.
Spain.
Well, you know, you always send invites out, and the hope was they would be here. Dwight Eisenhower had attended ceremonies for the 150th anniversary, and you had Theodore Roosevelt went to St. Louis for the Centennial, which was a launching of the World's Fair. But this was a highly charged political year. We, of course, have had the war in Iraq, and President Bush, I'm sure, had some reasons why he decided not to come. He was the other day
at Kitty Hawk. We were talking about that. He could make that.
And it, when the plane didn't take off, but here we know the flag's going to go up today, and it's a pity that the president wasn't able to make it.
And I think it really does kind of show the politics involved, and a lot of politics involved in this 200 years ago. Again, politics in this event today.
Well, you know, we probably have never had a worse year for French-American relations. I mean, this was the year when the French fries were starting to be banned.
Called freedom fries.
Yeah, they're called freedom fries instead. And so I think you found a White House that was a little bit skittish about hosting, particularly in the Deep South, in a state like Louisiana, one which they would like to win, to have a president here with Chirac. So the invites went out, nobody accepted. So instead we got representatives from the other countries, which we just heard, and they gave did a very nice job of representing their countries.
And the last person who spoke was Ambassador Jean Alexander of Haiti, and talking about the Haitian involvement, and actually owe a lot to Haiti.
Well, it is, and it's been one of the interesting things that people have talked about this past year. If it wasn't for the fact that Haiti was able to lick the French, boot them out, and defeat them there, it made Napoleon quite hesitant. If we can't control the island of Haiti, how possibly are we going to control New Orleans, the Mississippi River, and all that land west of the Mississippi?
His New World vision just disintegrated.
Exactly, and it was, and at that point he had a bigger enemy to deal with, which is Great Britain. And Jefferson, remember, was a well-known Francophile. He spoke French. He had been our representative and minister in Paris before. He had properly sent Robert Livingston and James Monroe, two very distinguished diplomats. Livingston was with Jefferson when the Declaration of Independence was signed and actually helped him with it. It was really the alter ego in many ways of Thomas Jefferson. So Napoleon knew that Jefferson was sending the right people there. And if I could say one thing, the year before this date, even a year ago, in 1802, and what you had is Thomas Jefferson sending letters to France saying, if we don't get control of New Orleans, the Mississippi River, it might mean we're pregnant with Great Britain forever. That's something clearly they did not.
All right, and we're going to return back to Jackson Square. They have some of the ceremonies going on. You can see a drum and fife corps there. And what uniforms will these represent, Doug?
Well, you're just seeing now what would be the, I think you're going to be hearing today the drum corps of playing Old Columbia, which was the song that was originally sang when it came up.
Before the Stars and Stripes and the Star Spangled Banner, rather.
Yeah.
And now on this day in 1803, and within the span of a month or so, the Spanish flag had gone up, come down, the French flag had gone up and come down, and then the American flag went up.
Well, and we have to remember what's significant about today is when that Stars and Stripes went up, it sent panic here through New Orleans. It was a French city, and particularly a Catholic city. And one of the great documents which people have been talking about this year is the Ursuline nuns who wrote Jefferson saying, will we have our religious freedom? Will we be able to practice Catholicism? And in America, that was associated largely with Protestantism. And Jefferson said, you bet you, sisters, keep on going. You're taking care of the poor. You're taking care of orphans. We believe in religious freedom in the United States. Today in New Orleans is the culmination of the greatest moment of Jefferson's career. I think as significant as his writing the Declaration of Independence. He announced the Louisiana Purchase on July 4th to American people. He had to sell it to America on national security grounds, and the big moment occurred when the actual transfer documents were signed at the Cabildo here in New Orleans.
We have talked about that a number of times, because I had always thought that the biggest thing Jefferson ever did, of course, was the Declaration of Independence, helping the birth of this nation. But you've always said, as you just said now, that the Louisiana Purchase was even more monumental to this country.
And the reason is, somebody would have written the Declaration. Jefferson was tapped to do it and had a lot of input. But as president, and of course he was not president, there was no country at that time. But on the Louisiana Purchase, it was Jefferson's vision of an empire of liberty, as he called it. He believed, unlike most politicians of his era, that the Mississippi River was not the western frontier, but the middle of the American continent, and that we were going to be able to have an agrarian America where people kept settling westward. But it's also important today to remember that what Jefferson sent Monroe and particularly Livingston to do is not buy the Louisiana Territory, but just the city of New Orleans.
New Orleans.
And he instead got the whole kit and caboodle for $15 million.
Lanyap.
Yes.
And how much of this was just based on historical events? I mean, it was fortunate for the United States that Napoleon was interested in getting to Britain and fighting Great Britain, and it was in Napoleon's best interest that he build a stronger U.S., that the United States become stronger.
Well, that's right. Remember, as it was remarked on in the ceremonies, at the time of the American Revolution, France was our great friend. I mean, and of course, you just look at whether it's the Battle of Yorktown or what General Lafayette did, or everywhere it's the French helping the Americans. So French-American relations were good, but they were starting to corrode. And Jefferson, unlike the Federalist, believed in this Franco-American alliance. Others believed in particularly New England, because of the trading, coastal trades, that we had to tie our kite to Great Britain still, even though we had independence with them. So I think Napoleon felt that he wanted to make this deal with Jefferson. It would keep America as a friend. He'd rather all this land fall in American hands than British or Spanish hands, and he needed the cash to continue his war with Great Britain.
And as we're waiting we are having some technical difficulties with our pool feed down in Jackson Square. As we wait for that, we do want to remind people that at the time of the Louisiana Purchase, this kind of was a country divided, and we had a harsh relationship with Great Britain. America owned the Northwest Territory, but not that middle section that Jefferson thought was so important. And then after the Louisiana Purchase, and we owned all that middle ground, then the dispute over the Northwestern Territory came about.
Well, when you look at 19th century wars, it's often about land in the United States, who controls it. The so-called Northwest Territory, land of what today is Ohio and Michigan and all that, was part of the United States yet, but we of course fought a war of 1812 because Great Britain and France were sticking their flags, particularly Great Britain, all over that area, saying we control Detroit, or we control parts of the Great Lakes, and the United States said, no, you don't. We fought a war against Great Britain, and of course we had the Battle of New Orleans here in the War of 1812. But once that was secured and the Louisiana Territory was secured, there became a westward expansion movement, and people moving west into these lands that Lewis and Clark went to discover, and Zebulon Pike. And that culminated in 1840s with the Mexican-American War, where General Zachary Taylor, who lived in Louisiana, was dispatched across the Rio Grande and got into a skirmish with Mexico. And of course, through to that war, we were able to acquire what is modern-day Southern California, New Mexico, Arizona. Sure. And then we started having this sea to shining sea, as we like to say it in our popular song.
Building the nation brick by brick, area by area. It's interesting that when the Louisiana Purchase occurred, that there were only about 43,000 people living in the entire territory. So it was just wide open territory at that time. And I also understand that the Spanish, it was just a cultural hodgepodge, and there were only like 1 in 7 who were Americans, or considered themselves to be Americans.
Well, you said it. The hodgepodge is a good word. Imagine if you were living in New England and you were suddenly told that all of this Louisiana territory was now part of the United States. And Jefferson said if you lived there, and if you were a white person, you became anybody there became a citizen. Right. You would be able to get the right to vote. Well, this meant you were from Kentucky. You were a Kentucky ne'er-do-well drifter. You were a rogue. You were a ruffian. You were a scallywag. You were some kind of backwoods frontier explorer. Suddenly, all of these people being incorporated into an America which in New England was still very aristocratic in its outlook. It infuriated people in New England. Louisiana Purchase. A congressman named Josiah Quincy started leading a movement to break away from the United States, to have New England leave the Union in a secession.
Plus then you changed currency, all kinds of things, yeah.
Oh, it became it created a wave of fear. And so while people study Jefferson's presidency, some things that he did not do right, and we won't have time today to get into all of that, but the one thing he certainly did was to send the right people to France to negotiate. And they knew Jefferson's mind so well, Livingston. He was a Renaissance man. Livingston.
And let's talk about it. That was Robert Livingston, who is an ancestor of former Congressman Bob Livingston.
Fascinating aspect. And then we had Lindy Boggs there speaking a minute ago of Governor Claiborne, direct descendants here. Robert Livingston came from New York. He was a real estate broker. He made a lot of money in agriculture. He had some failed efforts. He used to try to breed cows and elk together, which never worked. And he went
but
belly.
He tried.
He tried, and Jefferson appreciated it, and he ended up was almost deaf, but he was somebody that spoke no French, but Jefferson trusted in him.
All right, right now we're back in Jackson Square.
We're seeing this, and I believe this is the Spanish flag that has just come down as they're changing from the Spanish to the French at this moment.
And now, how did all that work, Doug? Since the Spanish had it, it was turned over to France, and that was kept in kind of secrecy.
Well, the whole purchase was kept in secrecy because there was a more complicated deal. This territory was originally Spanish, and the French had acquired it, but they didn't want it known, so it was all cloaked largely in secrecy. And remember, we had a number of these transfer ceremonies. We're here in New Orleans where the documents were signed, but at different places the American flag would have to be flown all over what became the Louisiana Territory. The crucial point when you're watching all this, people aren't here thinking, boy, we're getting all this great land west of the Mississippi, but the people were thinking at the time is now New Orleans is going to be in American hands, and they're going to control the great Mississippi River. Jefferson said the Mississippi River is worth more than us than all the other rivers in the United States combined.
And I assume now with those uniforms we'll see the French flag being raised. Oh, it's already been put up there, they're telling me. That's a reminder of the French troops and civilians as they parade into Jackson Square. We can see part of that ceremony going on.
What we're doing in this ceremony is we're condensing into just an hour and a half what took months to do. Actually, as I understand it, Doug, it was first decided in November 30th, 1803, the deal for the Louisiana Purchase was supposed to, when Spain transferred it to France in November 30th, 1803, and Lestat was instructed to transfer Louisiana to the United States the next day, but of course it wasn't the next day, but the next month.
Well, that's right. I think one of the problems we've had here in New Orleans, or in Louisiana, you look at the license plates that say Louisiana Purchase all over the state, it wasn't one singular event. This is a culmination of a year of diplomacy. So we've had a date in April, which was the 200th anniversary, and July 4th was the 200th, and you could have claimed one in November, and you could claim today. But this is the one for the most significant because of the actual signing and transfer agreements. And I urge anybody that's watching today to make a journey to the Cabildo and to go there and go into that historic room. And it's really one of the great sites, not just in Louisiana, but in America. As was mentioned by Secretary Norton, there were only 3 documents people think more important than the Louisiana Purchase: the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights.
And Doug, I'll tell you what, set the scene for us back in 1803, what the Jackson Square looked like at that time, and then we'll let some of the sounds be heard of the ceremony.
Well, the one thing that you didn't have, it wasn't Jackson Square because you didn't have an Andrew Jackson.
There you go.
Of course, Jackson, with the statue we all love in the city of him on his horse holding the hat and saluting, that comes after he's the hero of the Battle of New Orleans in 1814.
But the Cabildo was there, the cathedral was there.
And the river view that you would get is the same. The great bend in the Mississippi, which made it such an extraordinary port. You know, you had the city divided into so many different districts. There, of course, were Americans here at the time, but the hierarchy had been really a French-controlled city and a Spanish-controlled city, with the Americans, though, gaining credibility all the time. And it was a city filled with people from around the world, like all great port cities were.
Let's go ahead and watch part of the ceremony for a few minutes.
Helping to maintain crowd control, as we would call it today. Pierre Clement Losat was governing the territory for Napoleon Bonaparte, who was at this time the first consul of France. Losat had only officially been governor since the 30th of November, and he soon found out his only duty was to formally hand over the colony to the United States following the successful conclusion of the Louisiana Purchase. Governor Losat is receiving the salute of the French troops. And he now orders Major Banache to ask the U.S. troops to enter the parade ground as he and his aide-de-camp enter the Cabildo. As Losat left his residence with his officers and soldiers, he was also joined by a large number of citizens, eagerly showing their support of France and the new agreement between the two new governments. And the soldiers' favorite position on the parade ground, stand at ease. Now, if the nosh has reached the U.S. troops, the next drums you hear will be those of the U.S. Army. From my vantage point, I can see he is talking to them.
The uniforms worn by the troops are of two types. Most of them are the National Guard uniforms, which are worn by all French colonial troops. But there are also a group of grenadiers, an elite corps mainly made up of ex-French soldiers.
You may also see in the crowd nuns of the Ursuline order that we talked about earlier. They were sent here in 1726 by King Louis XV to educate the young women of this city. As we mentioned, the Ursuline nuns are still here more than 275 years later. They were wearing their traditional habit then.
And their second convent, built in 1745, is the oldest building surviving in New Orleans. The Cabildo was relatively new at the time of the Louisiana Purchase.
And I'll tell you what, you look at some of the planning and the historicalness of this event going on today, and you wonder where they might have gotten all the information. Doug was telling us from newspaper articles, from accounts that were written by people who visited this, were able to go ahead, and it's been saved over all these years, right, Doug?
Well, that's right, and you know, one of the people that should be really thanked today is the Louisiana State Museum, who's done such an incredible job this year of bringing a consciousness to this historic bicentennial.
And the tension, describe the tension at that time, because the troops were there because they didn't know how the public was going to respond.
Well, the fears of riots, fear of disorderly conduct, as you would have of any event at this magnitude. But more than that, a fear of what does the future have in store? What is it going to be like to be living under a new American president?
And Doug, we're hearing the U.S. Drum and Fife Corps as they strike up the music as the troops march into the parade ground. They're actors portraying General James Wilkinson and William C.C. Claiborne. They're with the troops. General Wilkinson was the only general still in the U.S. Army who was a veteran of the Revolution. Claiborne, of course, was appointed to be the first governor of the new U.S. territory. They'll be entering the Cabildo to meet Pierre Lassat. And all this, a huge day. Was the weather this nice back then, I wonder?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a beautiful day. One of the key things that was mentioned earlier I would like our viewers to realize is that Lewis and Clark had already been dispatched. They were sent in early January of '03, so Jefferson had already had them out looking to see what a way to get to the Orient. So they were already on their journey. What occurred immediately following this, and you mentioned Governor Wilkinson, is that a forgotten figure, unfortunately, Zebulon Pike, was dispatched from St. Louis first to go up the Mississippi to see what was going to be in American hands now.
Well, Jefferson wanted to make sure he's getting a lot of bang for his buck.
And curiosity, what is it up there? And also planting of the American flag. So Pike went to look for the headwaters of the Mississippi River. He misdiagnosed it. It's Lake Itasca. He was about 30 miles off. But then Pike came back and was sent to go find the headwaters of the Arkansas River, the Red River. He eventually was the first person of European descent to come upon Pike's Peak, which is named after him. He then went on
Is Fort Pike named after him as well?
All of the events of Pike, I believe Fort Pike, I'm not sure, but Zebulon Pike was the huge hero of this story here. He ended up dying in the War of 1812 in the Battle of York, which is present-day Toronto.
And talk about virgin territory. This country was all wilderness, lush with trees. It's hard to even imagine what it was like back then.
A lot of native populations which were encountered and written about. If you read, for example, Pike's journals, when he went to actually discover the Louisiana territory or looked for what was going on, there were already societies living there. teeming herds of buffalo that are recorded, not just in the great Lewis and Clark journals, but also in Zebulon Pike's journals. Pike's journals were eventually confiscated in Santa Fe, and he ended up having to negotiate. He was arrested and make his way back. But Jefferson was very excited about the Pike expedition. I hope in the coming years we get to deal with that here in Louisiana, how important Pike was for understanding what the territory is.
We're seeing Wilkinson and Claiborne
entering the Cabildo and preparing to go up to the Sala Capitular for the signing of the historic document.
And this is actually where it all occurred.
That's correct, and it's always, you get a, if you're a history lover and care about this country, you always get a bit of a chill when you enter that room just to think there it occurred.
And you notice the flag wrapped around that soldier's waist. The flag had, in 1803, had only 15 stars, representing the number of stars in the Union then. Louisiana Star would be added in 1812 when the state officially joined the USA.
It's the same type of drill practiced by the
You know, we
US.
shouldn't forget today that the people, it's called West Florida. Not all of what is Louisiana became part of the United States today. There was pocket which stayed as West Florida. If you look at a map along the Gulf Coast of Mississippi and to the panhandle of Florida, there's a whole vast territory not negotiated where some people that are probably watching this show live. Even though they're in Louisiana, they weren't part of the Louisiana Purchase.
And now, who actually got to go up in the room where the signing took place?
Well, not to just the signers and the people that were eyewitnesses to it. There were a couple of eyewitness accounts that were later written about witnessing it.
And why didn't Jefferson come down for this?
Jefferson never got west of there, just for transportation reasons.
Things that we take for granted today, easy travel, it was a major
I thought just
ordeal.
for the pride alone of his purchase, he'd have really wanted to.
That's an interesting and fair question. He never came to Louisiana. Thomas Jefferson was never here to the city, so it was done by his surrogates who were running this territory.
Now they're preparing to raise the American flag and lower the French flag in the ceremony going on right now in the Jackson Square.
Yeah, I think we've been told that. And I'm being told that they'll put the flag on the halyard, wait for a few minutes, then the order will come to raise the flag.
After the historic signing takes
Sure.
place to signify that this is now American territory.
And I guess that would be only logical since it wasn't American territory officially yet. And now, how was money transferred in those days, Doug?
Well, the Louisiana Purchase, we didn't have the money for it, even though it sounds like we didn't have the lose 50 million. Jefferson had to, believe it or not, our government had to borrow money from British banks to help make the purchase, which tells you how absurd
ironic,
it is.
yeah.
But they were willing to pay that amount of money just for the New Orleans area, just to have the access to the mouth of the river.
Just for the mouth of the river. So it was, you know, there was, as you said, lagniappe to have all this vast other territory. It was, you remember, it's easy today, people call it the greatest real estate deal in American history.
But that was quite a chunk of money then.
But that was a chunk of money. At one point, my late colleague Steve Ambrose and I had broke it down into what you could have bought for $15 million back then. It's quite astounding.
Well, half Europe probably, yeah.
Mayor Reagan said that, Mayor Nagin said that it was, in today's dollars, $250 million.
Which is still a cheap price.
Still,
Yes,
that's
still.
the deal of the century.
But nobody knew what they were. A lot of people thought it was wasteland. You know?
Sure.
In fact, I mentioned to you Pike, when he went out to what's modern-day Nebraska, for example, what we consider a breadbasket, he recorded it's the Great Desert. And it was a, you know, nothing's going to grow there. Well, how wrong could he have been? And Lewis and Clark, remember, had to come back and tell Jefferson, you know, there is no short route to the Pacific. What you bought was a lot of land you're not going to be able to use. So it was not immediately apparent that all this Louisiana territory was a great thing.
And hindsight is 20/20. I know a friend of mine, her grandfather had a chance to buy a lot of that land out where Lakeside Mall is for like $500 an acre and said, no, it's not worth it. So, you know, as always, hindsight's 20/20. We'll take a quick break here.
And then we're going to go into the Cabildo and see the reenactment of the signing of the Louisiana Purchase.
The Sugar Bowl, New Year's Day, 1959. A remarkable running back named Billy Cannon throws a rare option pass to win the National College Football Championship for LSU. After waiting 45 long years, can the Tigers finally do it again? Now take an in-depth look at Nick Saban's finely tuned team and hear what this former Sugar Bowl MVP has to say. Join Eyewitness Sports for The Quest to Be Best, a primetime special Tuesday, December 30th on Channel 4.
Now, a special holiday beverage from Sweden as singer Teresa Anderson makes her tasty hot glögg.
As we count down to a safe new year with a dozen recipes designated 12 for the road, tonight at 10 on Channel 4.
On April 13, 1803, an American envoy in France wrote President Jefferson with news of the Louisiana Purchase. His letter took 6 weeks via schooner to reach Washington. Later, the official documents were carried to New Orleans, a trip that took over 40 days. Now, WWL-TV can bring Louisiana vital news as it's breaking. We also launched the country's first round-the-clock local news service.
Channel 15 is now available in 6 metropolitan parishes.
While everything from Frank's recipes to live pinpoint radar is at your fingertips on WWL-TV.com. We made history again as New Orleans' first station to broadcast in dazzling high definition.
High-definition television on Channel 36 is like being in a movie theater. It's crystal clear technology.
We're celebrating the Louisiana Purchase at WWL-TV Channel 4.
Known throughout the cosmos.
What is the cha-cha?
And in living rooms all across America. Jeopardy! Millions are watching. Are you?
Weekdays at 4:30 on WWL-TV Channel 4.
Shauna Sanford on Channel 4's Eyewitness News.
And we're looking at a shot inside the Cabildo with General Wilkinson and Claiborne. And would that be Lasat in the center?
Lasat.
And he's got kind of that Napoleonic haircut going on there.
Well.
And they're preparing now for the reenactment ceremony, and we're going to listen to that.
I hereby state that I am transferring the whole of the Louisiana Territory to the government of the United States by the authority vested in me by First Consul Napoleon Bonaparte on behalf of the French Republic. General Wilkinson, as commander of the Army of the Republic of the United States, I give to you the keys of the city of Nouvelle Orleans, which your soldiers will now have the honor of defending.
Be assured, Your Excellency, that the people and the private property of the inhabitants of this great city, regardless of species or rank, we shall look upon them with sacred respect, and no one may dare to punish the one or violate the other without speedy and condign punishment.
I also hereby absolve from their allegiance to the French Republic all such citizens who choose to remain here under the domination of the United States. And so, gentlemen, all that remains is for us now to sign and seal the document.
And Doug, we look at, as these papers are signed, everything was done all legal and proper, and you don't think that back in those days that things were done the way they are today, in fact?
Well, of course, we're not seeing what's going on in the taverns right now, right behind the signing, where the Americans are drinking the mashed whiskey and rum and laughing at the French that now we're in charge. Your flag's down, buddy. It's now an American city.
And there was much saber rattling before this somber occasion. And wasn't it this somber and deliberate?
Well, of course, this is inside the Cabildo, and there's a whole street theater going on outside at this time.
And these are dignitaries. These are ambassadors. These
Absolutely.
are people who are on a different level than, and we hate to say that, but the common folk.
Of course, and you know, for the, Wilkinson was one of the great heroes of the American Revolution. Somebody who was known as a Western frontier fighter, somebody who had the direct attention and ear of Thomas Jefferson. This was, for this area, Claiborne and Wilkinson were the two people of gravitas in the region.
Yes, Wilkinson was the only general still in the U.S. Army who was a veteran of the Revolution. So, very venerable group there to sign.
And now, what happened to Lassalle after the signing ceremony?
Well, Lasatte's an unknown figure, really, in American or even French history. He doesn't carry on in the kind of way that you... his most famous event is what you're witnessing here. He's on this, his signature, oftentimes when you want to go look at the Louisiana Purchase, you want to see Thomas Jefferson's
And now, gentlemen.
Instead, these are the gentlemen that you get.
It is done.
Or Napoleon.
And now they're going to tell the people that it is done.
You have to remember there was also the signing done earlier in 1803 in France, where Livingston and Monroe and Napoleon making the deal.
This is the ceremonial signing then, the official signing.
And this is the signing just for the lower portion of the Mississippi.
That's correct. There was another one that took place in St. Louis. There was another event for it. So, but this is the one most people call the transfer ceremony.
Because it really did get the ball rolling officially.
What was the delay between the signing for the lower and the upper?
It came later. This was the original, the first one, and the one up in St. Louis came.
And there was a delay for what reason? For transferring the entire territory?
Well, there was a continuous series of negotiations and ceremonies of how to organize people. There was still land, as I mentioned earlier, in dispute at this point.
And here we're watching Lasatte, Claiborne, and Wilkinson as they head to the balcony. They'll announce to the people outside that the deal has been done.
Why was Governor Claiborne selected? Why was Claiborne selected to be governor of
Claiborne
Louisiana?
was the most, he was the person to know the region the best. Of course, you wanted a military man and somebody who could pull a militia force together. The key to having a city, well, you saw the key handed to New Orleans, and you heard the word punishment said shortly after. The fact of the matter is, it's one thing to sign a document that says you control a city. Another thing is to control it. So you needed people like General Wilkinson who knew how to call up militia forces. And of course, just a short years later, you see the need of it in the War of 1812 when you have the battle on the plain of Chalmette against the British, when the whole city of New Orleans was trying to be taken by the Brits.
There you see the monumental walk out on the balcony.
The signal has been given.
And the change of history, the change of ownership, the change of leadership in Louisiana and Louisiana Territory. And we'll take as we watch him descend the stairs, we'll take a quick break and be more with this special live coverage of the ceremonial signing of the Louisiana Purchase 200 years later.
Of the United States anthem.
The Tigers' quest to be best, December 30th.
Time to spice up your home? Prince & Pauper has beautiful and practical furniture to create your own original lifestyle. We take the best ideas and make them affordable. All your best ideas, and with our huge inventory, the scene is always changing, so it's full of great gift ideas too. Prince & Pauper, 2801 Magazine Street, and now 4100 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. Prince & Pauper.
This is a test of the emergency alert system.
here is the official exchanging of the flags, as luck would have it, while we're in commercial break.
We
Big
do
cannon
have it,
fire,
and
oil
we're
and
going to
tape.
show
We'll
it
bring
to
that in
you.
a second.
We're going to show it to you.
Holding the French flag.
A momentous occasion. What would you think that the scene was like 200 years ago, Doug?
Well, it was a larger group of people gathering around, and the stakes were high. Today, it's a simple reenactment, obviously.
And we're watching him tie the flag around his waist. What is the ceremonial reason for that?
I don't know why exactly they're tying it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hadn't
Well, it
seen
keeps
that
it from
before.
dragging on the ground, and that's something that's
I don't know whether
no-no.
it was maybe one of our viewers will know.
I'm assuming I'm assuming they did it back then.
Yes, correct. I think what you can be assured of, they've done everything here as close to exactitude as one can.
Even the instruments are from that period.
And present him with a salute for the final time. What?
You know, when you see a lot of these reenactments, we've done a lot in recent years with the D-Day Museum. We would go out to Lake Pontchartrain and there'd be a reenactment.
Sure. And we see them at the Chalmette battlefield all the time.
And it's a lot of effort. These people oftentimes...
Of the militia, you have given proof of your zealous devotion to the French flag in the short time it has flown over these regions. The French government will be told of it. I express my gratitude to you on behalf of that government. From this moment, you pass under the domination of the United States. I turn your command over to their representatives. Obey them as representatives of the United States.
Lassat giving his final dictate to his troops there, and they will play the French national anthem in a couple of seconds.
In French history, this is a big moment because here's France really giving up on its hope of empire.
Sure.
Today you have, you don't have in South America, it's Spanish-speaking countries, Portuguese-speaking countries, with the exception of Haiti, which they, of course, lost, and we've talked about earlier. You don't have the French influence in the New World. They had Quebec, and they lost to the British there. So this whole hemisphere, this is you're witnessing 200 years ago, France sort of losing control of of the hemisphere.
Does history judge Napoleon as making a blunder doing this, or?
Most people feel it was a blunder, but for the time it was great. It was practical for his military needs at the times, but he was an empire who, of course, fell out of power and had to end up going in exile. The image of Napoleon continues to linger in New Orleans with the Napoleon House.
And was he supposed to come here and live there?
He was supposed. There's a lot of mythology that floats around, and that his death mask, and he was going to come in what is now the wonderful bar and po' boy institution of the Napoleon House. But myths surround a lot of that. And in fact, he ended up going to living a life in island exile.
French rule in Louisiana ends.
There's the American flag.
And the American flag stands, and the order to the people to obey the command of the United States.
And with that flag there, it represents the doubling of the United States.
Sure.
You're just seeing land-wise in the...
And we're going to go ahead and show you some of the video of what happened while we were on the commercial break with the raising of the American flag, the shooting of the cannon.
Yeah.
You know, the Purchase purchase didn't occur, just think what a vastly different country the United States would have been if it would have been a British country across the Mississippi River or a French country.
We're showing that part of the ceremony we missed with the French flag coming down, the American flag going up. And at that time, as you said, the American flag only had, what, 15 stars? 15 stars. And Louisiana would be added when? Do you remember?
1812.
1812.
We've got another bicentennial coming up if we all make it for 9 more years.
And this is, as we showed you before, the folding of the flag. If we can go back to the live pictures now.
The future of the United States is now on the western frontier rather than looking back towards Europe. Today, as a nation, we are what our ancestors made us. And like them, we must always look to the future.
And there you have it, the reenactment of the ceremony commemorating the 200th anniversary of the Louisiana Purchase as reenacted down in Jackson Square. A beautiful ceremony today. A beautiful day for it, too.
Yes, and we want to thank you, Dr. Doug Brinkley, for joining us, the director of the UNO Eisenhower Center.
And there's plenty of reading material if people want to go ahead and check up on this.
Absolutely. The historian John Kukla wrote almost closest you can get to a definitive history this past year of the Louisiana Purchase, A Wilderness So Immense. It's a first-rate book. I recommend
And then you and Stephen did the book on...
Steve Ambrose and I did a book traveling up the Mississippi River, and we asked ourselves, what did Thomas Jefferson get us? And our book that we did is called Mississippi and the Making of a Nation.
And you found out plenty. There are other events going on in the French Quarter today to mark this anniversary, and we'll bring you a full report of those events on the Eyewitness News with Josh McKelvin at 10 p.m. tonight.
Until then, thank you very much for watching.
Have a great day.